This week I've got The Sisters Brothers, which stars John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix as the Sisters Brothers. It's set in the 1850s in the Old West, and they play these kind of outlaw guys who are in the employ of the Commodore, who is I want to say kind of baron, or, well, he's a Commodore of criminal activity. He's got a network. He rules the West, or part of the West. And they are kind of henchmen, lackeys in his employ, assassins, ne'er-do-wells. And so it's hard from the start, right? Because you're supposed to sympathize or empathize with these characters who are murdering people for a living. Tough selling point to kick off with. So they have been assigned to track down a character played by Riz Ahmed, who I very much like, but I like seeing diverse casting, but there was a little bit of a question of what would he be doing in 1850 in the West? Just putting it out there. Nothing wrong with it, but just a question I had. So they are sent to track him down because he has a magical formula, something to do with mining for gold, and the Commodore wants it. So the Sisters Brothers, John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix, are sent to get it. And Jake Gyllenhaal plays somebody who is also kind of in the Commodore's criminal network, who is the tracker and is sent ahead to kind of befriend Riz, or at least keep him in his sights. And then relationships ensue. Things get complicated. The film's plot is ambling, and that's being generous. There's a whole middle section that is its own separate movie almost, and it's what's this doing here? I will say, I love John C. Reilly. I love Riz Ahmed. I like Jake Gyllenhaal a lot. Joaquin Phoenix, I am not sold on. I know a lot of people think he's a really great actor. I've seen him in roles that I think he's been impressive in. Actually, I thought Her was a really great movie. But I, overall, don't particularly enjoy watching his performances. I am terrified for him to be in the Joker because I don't see him as the Joker. I'm not particularly impressed with the, makeup tests I've seen so far, but I'm digressing. He makes, an unsympathetic protagonist. John C. Reilly's kind of there to balance him out, but Joaquin Phoenix's character is definitely the more unhinged of the two. And so watching them interact, it's a tough watch for a lot of the movie, and it's a 2-hour movie. So other comments I had were, what the hell is Jake Gyllenhaal's accent in this? It's the most ridiculous kind of silly old-timey Western accent. Ambling plot, probably could have cut down a good 20 minutes. I think it's supposed to be character study-ish, but it just felt bloated, honestly. There are a couple hard things to watch. It doesn't shy away from violence, which I guess would make sense of the time. I just keep going back to, it's hard to sympathize with these characters. Reilly is easier to sympathize with just because he's supposed to be the more level-headed one. He's just in it to kind of protect his brother, and as a byproduct, is it okay with being a, mass murderer? It just raises questions. This is an interesting, more original, well, actually it's not that original, right? Because it's just kind of stealing, or just, it's not reinventing the Western genre, really. We've seen plenty of movies that do take, that, are following outlaws that are much more interesting, and they're outlaws because they don't want to be necessarily, or they're outlaws because they're, Robin Hooding and fighting for the underrepresented and, in the West. And I don't feel a connection to these characters. Overall, I'm going to give it 2.7 out of 5. That might be being a little harsh, but I'm if you're going to have this much talent in it, you have some very talented people. I'll even acknowledge that, Joaquin Phoenix, when used appropriately, is a very talented actor. So, your script and your setting and all that stuff has to match, and I don't think it quite was there. So 2.7 out of 5. This week I also have Colette, which is by Wash Westmoreland, whose name you might not know right off the bat, but you may have seen some of their movies. They did Still Alice and Quinceañera, which both I think are fantastic movies. So Colette is based on a real person, and they are played by Kiera Knightley, and she's from kind of the rural parts of France, and marries Dominic West's character, who's called Willie, and Willie is a sort of publishing magnate before there were publishing magnates. He puts his name on everything. He does music reviews, novels, plays, all that sort of thing, but a lot of the material is written by other people. He just brands it because he has that name recognition. Does this sound familiar and parallel to today, where men are taking credit for other people's work? Absolutely. My joke was, if he existed, in 2018, that he would probably be a Hollywood studio executive. So Kiera Knightley's Colette marries Willie, and they move to Paris. And of course, by the way, everyone who is French has an English accent. because that's just how movies work. And she ends up starting to ghostwrite for him. Of course, she's also still married to him. Their marriage has issues of its own, including him not taking fidelity as seriously as one would necessarily hope, and not being transparent about it, which is her biggest problem with it, is that he lies about it, which, you know, I had my own problems with that stuff, but I guess the women of the time probably were forced to really just sort of deal with whatever the men were doing. Does that sound familiar? Again, this film was really relevant, and I don't know if it meant to be, but it certainly was. So Colette ends up writing the Claudine novels, which again are real novels, and they are the talk of Paris, and they're based on her childhood, but Willie, her husband's name is on them, and she's not getting credit for them, and she starts to grow dissatisfied with that, and again, continues to grow dissatisfied in their marriage. So then the film kind of takes, I don't want to say a turn, but it certainly goes deeper than I thought it would have into her sexuality, and she kind of discovers women or acts upon her desires for women, and their marriage turns into this more open, but their actual marriage is probably not really a physical relationship anymore, but, you know, or even emotional past the point of friendship. Like, he is actually definitely emotionally abusive, and Dominic West is an interesting actor. You know, he plays these characters who, he seems like a charming guy, but then he plays these absolutely horrible characters, but he says it with a smile, and he's good at it, which kind of scares me, you know. I'm not saying that Dominic West is like a bad person, but it scares me his ability to make these men charming, but I'm like, you know what? These are men who women have dealt with in their, you know, we deal with today, right? Like, we deal with the character of Willie today. We deal with emotionally abusive, or, you know, it doesn't hit the point of physically abusive, but just these people who manipulate you and take you everything from you, and you think you're in love with them, or you think you're, you know, you owe them something. And it was, again, actually, the more I talk about this film, like, the deeper it gets. So I highly recommend seeing this film. It also sort of dips into the interesting territory of Colette starts a relationship with someone who is, I guess, would be transgender technically without the surgery at the time, you know, because that probably would have ended very horribly based on whatever the time was, medical procedures, with a woman who has a lot of money, so was just kind of able to like parade around in men's clothes and went by he. And I thought that was an interesting little tidbit, and I'm hoping it's actually based on fact. It seems like they seem to do their, oh yeah, I know it, they did their research. This movie will probably piss you off in a good way if you're a woman, because you will feel like, yes, I've been in her shoes. I understand what it's like to have guys take credit for my work and not feel ownership, or feel I'm society's, you know, wants me to conform to a certain thing. So timely, very, very timely. I recommend seeing it. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5.